I've just come back from Tanzania, where we entered into a number of agreements with the Tanzanian president in relation to enhancing economic growth between the two countries. We have 228 South African countries operating in Tanzania, and the Africa Free Trade Agreement therefore gives them an enormous platform to export finished goods from our shores here into the rest of the continent. To improve the levels of investment in the economy, we will hold the second South African Investment Conference from the 5th to the 7th of November. This will build on the success of the first conference, where commitments of some 300 billion rand were made by local and international companies in support of our 1.3 trillion rand investment drive. Of the 300 billion committed at the inaugural conference, around 250 billion worth of projects are in the implementation phase. There has been significant turnaround in flows of foreign direct investment, surging from 26.8 billion rand in 2017 to 70.7 billion rand in 2018. We are working on a set of priority reforms to improve the ease of doing business and reducing the cost of compliance. Technical working groups comprised of officials in the various and relevant departments have begun work on 5 of the indicators with regard to starting a business, paying taxes, registering property, trading across borders, and dealing with construction permits. One of the constraints to growth in our economy is the high level of economic concentration. Earlier this year, I signed the Competition Amendment Act into law, and major sections of this act have come into operation already. The new laws will give the competition authorities the ability to address abuse of dominance and high concentration that keeps small and emerging companies out of being key players in our economy. The combined efforts of DTI and the IDC and partnerships with the private sector are expected to provide support of well over 40 billion rand to black industrialists over the next 5 years, thus enhancing our radical economic transformation project. The IDC is expected to provide 11 billion rand in support of women-empowered enterprises alone, and further funds will be made available to youth enterprises. Through special interventions like special economic zones, reviving local industrial parks, business centers, digital hubs, and township and village enterprises, we are bringing economic development to local areas. We are working to develop small and medium enterprises in our cities, in our townships, and in our rural areas, and to create marketplaces where they can trade the products that they make. If we are to achieve the South Africa we want, we need to forge durable partnerships with government, with business, labor, and communities as well. Government is hard at work to create an enabling environment, use public resources wisely, and invest in developing the country's human potential. And in arriving at this, we've been listening and interacting with a number of role players, listening very closely to the suggestions that they are making, and those that we find have efficacy, we implement. Business and labor need to act together to promote our country's national strategic objectives. Early in the 6th administration, I engaged with the National Planning Commission to tap into the collective wisdom embodied in that esteemed collective of South Africans. In playing their advisory role, the National Planning Commission continues to develop research and insights to support strategies towards inclusive growth. There are no easy or quick solutions to low growth and unemployment. And this is an important part that we need to be aware of. When we introduced the economic recovery and stimulus package, we did say that this is a package with South African characteristics. It was not your typical stimulus project or plan, which is akin to what is done in other countries, because in other countries, they have quite a lot of money and they pump money into the economy to stimulate economic activity and growth, as well as to stimulate demand. In our case, we reprioritized and we have had to come up with measures. These interventions, by their very nature, take time to gain traction. And we are already seeing them gaining traction rather. And all we would say that it requires hard work. It requires smart policy choices, commitment, and above all, close cooperation amongst all social partners. We have embarked on a journey, and this journey will become clearer as we move on in the next few months. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Hermans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. President, the African National Congress notes the extensive interventions made to improve the economy. Further, in the SONA, you also announced that as part of stimulating investment, government will coordinate work to resolve challenges by investors and reforming investment promotion policy architecture, including reform measures for ease of doing business. The concerning matter for us as the African National Congress and all South Africans is the rise in the unemployment rate as reported by Stats SA in its quarterly labor force survey. Can the President further share with us the interventions and developments the government has made to build on these positive developments to reduce unemployment and create jobs?
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. President.
Thank you. Unemployment in our country is unacceptably high. We have identified it as the biggest risk that our country is facing at the moment. And this is particularly so amongst young people, and we are therefore moving forward with various interventions. And last year we did say that we've embarked on the Youth Employment Service project, and that is gaining traction. It is attracting a number of young people, and a number of young people are participating. We, however, have a number of other interventions that we are going to embark upon with a number of other social partners. The Job Summit interventions are also aimed at precisely addressing the unemployment challenge. And these interventions are being implemented as we speak, and the interventions that we are also making in relation to addressing youth unemployment are also being implemented. And we have set up a program management office in the presidency to focus specifically on the issue of youth unemployment. And we're working with various partners, the private sector, labor, and indeed various government departments. And we believe that we will be able to address it effectively, but more importantly, clearly, we need to be creating that conducive environment in our country for investments to take place. And it is for this reason that we are moving with great confidence to the investment conference in November, where we believe we'll be able to attract more investment to come into our country. Early indications are that a number of investors are actually very keen to come and invest in our country, including local investors who are already panel beating their various proposals for further investment in our economy. Much as we are seeing increased unemployment, but we're also seeing a glimmer of some hope, because those who had given up looking for work are now beginning in earnest to look for work, and hence the numbers have gone up. Clearly, we have to move much faster, much quicker, because every year the number of unemployed young people just increase the numbers of the unemployed in our country. We are addressing this. All I would say is that this is a national challenge. All of us need to put our heads together, to work together to see the extent to which we can address this problem. It is a major, major risk, and what we've embarked upon in the form of the stimulus package with South African characteristics is meant to address precisely this. What we are going to be announcing in the next few months is going to be aimed at addressing precisely all these. Now, daily, we are preoccupied with the best interventions that we can embark upon to address the unemployment challenge. So we are working on it, and much as the entire world is now facing low growth, we would like to boost more and more growth. And as I said, we look to the Africa Free Trade Area Agreement as being one of those boosters for economic growth in our country, and we are therefore calling upon businesses to look at this as a great opportunity, because many countries, as we travel around the continent, say they would rather be trading with us as South Africa rather than be trading with other trading partners who are far off in other countries offshore. So we have a great opportunity, and we can crank back to life our manufacturing base and reindustrialize our country and get the skill set that is needed to operate in our economy. So all these interventions are interlinked, and we will be seeking to make sure that they produce the ends that are required to get our economy moving forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Imam Sheikh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, let me acknowledge your comments when you started off by commending the Natal Indian Congress, and I hope that many of my colleagues in this House will realize the role that the Natal Indian Congress played in the liberation of our people in this country. Mr. President, the extended public works program appeared to have been very successful. We have challenges in the health sector, we have challenges in the police sector in terms of human resource. Now, why down to which, you've said that you are going to create 5 million jobs in 10 years, which is about 500,000 per year. But at this stage, there's about 200, you said you were going to create 200,000, but the needs are 500,000. Then could you, Mr. President, not introduce the similar system of the extended public works program into the health sector, into the South African police services who are under-resourced, so that at least these youth particularly that are idle will not be destructive and they will have something to do, and you could pay them a stipend.
Your time has expired, sir. Honorable members, please remember that if you are not the person who posed the question, you must limit yourself to 1 minute to make your supplementary question. If you are the person who put the question, you've got 2 minutes to put that. Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. The police will be the first to tell you that they are understaffed. The Minister of Police continuously tells us in Cabinet and elsewhere that our population has increased And in 1994, we had a police service that had a number of police officials, and that number has not increased much. And at the same time, the population has gone up. So he is in need, in order to fight crime in our country, is in need of more police officers who would be able to do the work that the whole nation expects of them. So there is a great need there. And you're now saying introduce the EPWP type of program. I would think that, the training of police is a more long-term process that requires careful choice, careful training, and he is in discussion with the Minister of Finance to see the extent to which this challenge of staff shortage in the police service can be resolved. And with all this, we've got to have a balance. The balance that has to do with whether we are able to try and reduce the costs, particularly at the salary bill level, because the more we employ more people, the more the salary bill goes up. And then we've got to have a very good balance, at the same time focus on the security and safety of our people. On the health side, we've got a number of community health workers. When Minister Motsoaledi was the Minister of Health, he kept saying to me that the World Health Organization has said that we need to employ easily 800,000 people who will make sure that primary health care takes root in our country. And of course, we don't have the money and the budget for that, but there is a great need for community health workers, more of them to be brought into the work that needs to be done to secure a good health regime for our people. So, Honorable Imam, there's a great need in that regard. The EPWP program has always been a very good stopgap measure that has assisted our people, and through it we've been able to employ no less than 4 million people in the life of the administration. Even in this case, we are seeing ourselves in this administration bringing in well over 4 million people who do absolutely outstanding work. Some involved in the health sector, some involved in environmental matters, and some involved in road building. I have spoken about this quite extensively in this Parliament or in this National Assembly. So we need to, yes, increase more people to participate in EPWP. We will need to see the extent to which some of them can actually be brought in to work in other disciplines. But most definitely, a vote for EPWP is the best that has been done for our people, because it has helped to alleviate the challenges and the poverty that many of our people are going through. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Maimani.
Mr. President, ESCOM have already said that any growth will result in load shedding. The next challenge is the fact that your government is unclear about its own policies. You go overseas, you tell people, no, you are going to guarantee private property rights. You come to South Africa, you say you are going to advance expropriation without compensation. You tell people elsewhere that in fact the Constitution guarantees the independence of the Reserve Bank, and then your own party comes out and says, no, we are going to nationalize the Reserve Bank. Now, Mr. President, on both those matters, you've got policy confusion. Here's the more crucial question. Your party has already come out and told the people of this country that in fact it is going to prescribe assets, which in simple terms, they are going to take the people of South Africa's pension money that they've worked hard all their lives. I want to ask, Mr. President, in the context where investment is down, growth is down, and unemployment is at a record high, will you tell the people of this country whether you do support the prescription of assets and the stealing,
Thank you, Mr.
the
Mamman.
nationalization of pension funds of South Africans.
Mr. President.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. The more I listen to Honorable Maimane, the more it seems like a broken record. It really does. I don't know how
Order.
many times, no, quite seriously. I mean, I always try to deal with members with the greatest respect. And when a member regurgitates the same issue, question time after question time, no matter how many answers you give him, the confusion is quite big on this side. And this for me is regrettable. It is quite regrettable. Madam Speaker, I have over and over again outlined the economic trajectory of our country, and it is, so you know and understand, it is an economic trajectory that is well appreciated by people in business, by people that we meet overseas, even at the World Economic Forum. In a few days, in 10 days or so, we will have the whole of the world, investing world coming here. And we are going to have a World Economic Forum, the Africa version, right here in this city. I would like to invite him to come and walk close to me so that he can hear precisely what the investing world is saying about our economic policies. So, Madam Speaker, I want to repeat that the African National Congress has the most progressive policies that it has put in place. The issue of prescribed assets has been discussed over and over and over again. And in the end, Madam Speaker, we are going to pursue policies that are going to advance the interests of our people here in South Africa and also advance the interests of the pension fund holders, the very workers of this country who are members of the trade unions, who themselves are the beneficiaries of all these pension funds. Madam Speaker, our policies are very clear and we are pursuing a strategy and a trajectory of economic policy and reform that is seen as being quite positive by the investing world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Madam Speaker,
Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, I address you in terms of Rule 1426 of the National Assembly rules. That is the type of response you expect from a loan shark, not from a president. The question was clear. Do you support prescription of assets? The president has given us some meanders. He has not answered the question. Do you support prescription of assets or not? Simple question.
Madam Speaker.
Honorable. Honorable President, please take your seat. Honorable members, there are times when we need to be getting very excited because all of us represent people. But when it is important for the country, you allow for people to make responses. You listen to the responses. No honorable members. No honorable members. You must understand that a presiding officer cannot prescribe how the question is answered here. I am Mr. Maimane, addressing a point of order from your party. Will you give me the respect? Now, the quality of response from anybody on the podium or any minister answering from their seat It's not something that you can ask me to put a judgment on. If you are not satisfied with the response that you get, there are many ways that you do know, Honorable Steenhuisen, that you can resort to ask questions. Please proceed, Mr. President.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
No, it's okay. Honorable Steenhuisen,
May I
I'm
address
hoping
you?
we are not in a dialogue.
No, I'm not in a dialogue. I'm taking a point of order in terms of Rule 26(4) of the Rules of the National Assembly, which says very clearly that the Speaker must act fairly and impartially and apply the rules with due regard, ensuring the participation of members of all parties in a manner consistent with democracy. How is it democratic that we come here to ask questions of the President and the President is allowed under your watch to simply ignore the question? It was simple. Do you support prescribed assets or not? The President spoke in meanders about his policies, about also, he did not answer the question. This session becomes a joke and
Honourable
irrelevant
Steenhuisen.
if this is allowed to happen. And this is how Zuma was created.
Honorable
This is exactly
Steenhuisen.
how Zuma was
Honorable
created.
Steenhuisen. Honorable Steenhuisen. Order, members. The question was answered. No. If you had been listening, no, order, members. Order. If you had been listening and your members had not been heckling, you would have heard that towards the end of that question. No. No, members.
Speaker.
Honorable Shibambo, give me a space to
But can you
respond
tell
to these
them we have to
members.
sit down, please?
Can you please take your seat, sir?
Please.
Honorable members, the question was responded to. You then rose, no. No, you are not, honorable members on the DA benches, going to prescribe how members will respond to the questions. If you know, no. If you do know, no. Listen to the responses and then, if you are not satisfied, follow the rules. The next, Honorable Malema. Honorable Malema, can I recognize you after this, Honorable Member? Honorable Hadebe, you had been standing.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First of all, Rule 92 prescribes that once you have made a decision, it cannot be challenged by anyone on the floor of the House, which is unfair. The way the Chief Whip of the opposition has done was basically challenging you instead of following the prescribed rule. Number two, Chair, the very same rule which the opposition has raised, Rule 142.6, deals with the issues of follow-up questions. The issue of prescribed assets has got nothing about the original question, has got nothing to do with the response of the President. So I think that we are too generous to offer them that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Malema.
Honorable Speaker, I thought the new era would have meant that you allow the President to decide if he wants to answer again because of the consent raised by the Chief Whip of the DA. And the relevance of the question is not for anyone to say this question is not relevant. It's for the President to decide that your question is not consistent with the main question. Therefore, he's got no jurisdiction to speak on behalf of the President, including yourself, Honorable Speaker. You can make that advice you gave us and take it back to the President. Mr. President, do you wish to say something in follow-up? And he decides.
Honorable members, may I rule for the last time on this issue? Honorable President, please take your seat. Honorable President, please take your seat. Honorable members, the third supplementary question went to Honorable Maiman. Honorable Maiman, you actually exceeded your time. I was patient. By 15 seconds. No, it has everything to do with me being tolerant sitting here. Honorable Maimani, the president then went on to respond to the question you had put. After he finished responding, there was then a point of order. The point of order from the Honorable Steenhuisen was that in terms of Rule 142.6, that question must be responded to. I responded to say the question was responded to. It's not my interpretation. No, please take your hand down. The response was given from the podium. I then elaborated, Honorable Malema. When I sit here, I am not the expert. I am not going to sit there and say you can answer this one or not. If it was a supplementary question and the president had not, and it was not in line with the principal response, I would have pointed out to the president. He chose to respond to this one. Now, if a member is not satisfied with the quality of response they have received, that's my ruling. The member knows what to do to follow up on that issue. That has been a precedent set in this House, and I'm not going to change it today. If a member stands up on a supplementary question, and that supplementary question has nothing to do with the principal question or the response, I will then rule out. And most of the time, if it is remotely related, I will allow that to the person who is responding whether they want to proceed. I now wish to proceed with the business of this day. And the next and the last supplementary on this question is posed by the Honorable Gadi. Honorable President, please take your seat. Honorable Ndlozi, you are not Honorable Gadi. Then I must be instructed that he is taking care. He doesn't just automatically jump out. You are taking care of the supplementary which was lodged by Honorable Gadi. Please proceed.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. You see, the question of prescribed assets, by the way, is very relevant to the original question because it has to do with economics, and that's what the question has opened to. So I think you need to take this opportunity to give direction to the country, because the idea that pension fund investments can be used in a time of crisis is completely ridiculous. Now, President, the NDP, which you were at the center of composing, has obviously dramatically failed. It promised to reduce unemployment to 14% by next year. You and I know that that is already gone. Is it not time to conceptualize a new macroeconomic framework, which, by the way, is going to place the state at the center of economic production and control? Historically, there is no country in the world, in the West, in the East, in the global South, that has ever developed without the state being at the center of production and control.
Your time has expired.
Shouldn't we pursue that economic route because your NDP has dramatically
Your time
failed?
has expired, sir. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me address two issues. The first issue being this issue that is being repeated by Honorable Ndlozi, having been raised by Honorable Malema, which I responded to. And in my response, I said, the issue of prescribed assets has been raised on a number of occasions in our country. And as I responded, I even interposed the key role players who are labor, particularly in relation to utilizing their own pension funds. And labor in our country is well disposed towards the utilization of their assets or their pensions to generate investment. I happen to know that COSATU's view on this issue is in line with precisely what Honorable Ndlozi has said. Now, the discussion needs to ensue. And we are saying the discussion needs to ensue in our country. We need to discuss this matter. And we need to discuss it with a view of actually saying, what is it that we can do to utilize the various resources in our country to generate growth in a purposeful manner? And right now, as we speak now, the one reservoir of public servants' money is in the PIC, the Government Employees Pension Fund. Portion of that money is used for developmental purposes. And in a number of cases, that has worked extremely well. And we now need to have this discussion, including with the pension fund industry in our country, in the insurance fund industry, and have a broad and wholesome discussion. And I would encourage all those who've got views to come forward with their views. We are faced with a situation where our financial resources have been depleted. And we are facing a situation where our developmental needs are enormous. And in a number of other places, pension funding is utilized for developmental purposes, for infrastructure, and quite often those pension funds make good returns out of infrastructure developments. So I am saying now that let's have that discussion. Let it be a national discussion. And thereafter, as a nation, we arrive at a conclusion that, yes, there is efficacy in utilizing resources to whatever extent to ensure that we enhance development. Honorable Ndlozi, coming to the NDP. Yes, the NDP targets are out of sync. We are way behind the targets that were set by the NDP. I would not say that the NDP has dramatically failed. There are quite a number of things that we are doing now as a nation which are inspired, which are based on what we adopted in relation to the National Development Plan. And it is for that reason, when I spoke here, I said the National Development Plan remains the lodestar in terms of a vision for our country. And of course, Honorable Ndlozi, I would welcome any opportunity where we can sit and discuss what do we then do. You posed the question, the state must be at the center of development in our country. That is what we have been saying, and much of what we've been doing, precisely what we are doing now is to say the state does need to play a leading role as the regulator. The state needs to play a leading role, in some cases, as the investor. And we need to be a smart state, a state that is entrepreneurial, which will take risks. Where the private sector is not able to take risks, the state should be able to take risks. So I don't see much of a difference between what you are saying and what we are seeking to do. What we need to do is to choose sectors where we can play. And this has been done all over the world. I mean, you look even at what you would call the most capitalist country in the world, the United States. It is the United States government that led the way in the creation of Silicon Valley. It is the United States government through its military that led the way to the creation of the internet. And the state does need to play an entrepreneurial role and a leading role and seed certain industries or sectors that need to come up. A good example is precisely what has happened in a number of countries. China is one, and a number of countries in Southeast Asia have done precisely that. So we are not completely in different camps on this matter. We see ourselves as becoming more and more of an entrepreneurial state, a state that will take risk, a state that will work with private sector and lead the private sector to invest more and more money. So we see a symbiotic relationship between what we do as a government as well as what the private sector can do. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the second question is put to you by the Leader of the Opposition. It is question number 2.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, in January 2018, the then President Jacob Zuma appointed a commission of inquiry to investigate allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector, including organs of state. The Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Judge Raymond Zondo, was appointed as the chairperson of the commission, having been identified by the Chief Justice. According to its terms of reference, among other things, the commission shall inquire into making findings, report on and make recommendations concerning the following. 1, the nature and extent of corruption, if any, in the awarding of contracts and tenders to companies, business entities, or organizations by government departments, agencies, or entities. In particular, whether any member of the National Executive, including the President, public official, functionary, or any organ of state influenced the awarding of tenders to benefit themselves, their families, or entities in which they held a personal interest. It should be obvious from these terms of reference that the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture has both the mandate and the authority to investigate matters to which Honorable Maimane refers. It is a matter of public record that the Commission is indeed investigating various allegations with respect to Bosasa, now known as African Global Operations. I, myself, have deposed an affidavit to the Commission regarding any contact or dealings I may have heard with persons who have either appeared before the Commission or have been named at the Commission in one form or another. I have also said that I would be willing and prepared to appear before the Commission at any time that the Commission would want me to hear me, on any matter that may assist them in their work. There is therefore absolutely no reason to establish a new inquiry to investigate a matter that is already being investigated by a sitting commission of inquiry. As a country and as leaders, we should direct our efforts towards supporting the Zondo Commission of Inquiry and urging all those with information relevant to its mandate to make themselves available to the Commission. We need also to support and equip the National Prosecuting Agents Authority to pursue investigations and prosecutions where there is evidence of criminality. As for the report of the Public Protector, honorable members may know that this matter has been taken on judicial or urgent judicial review. We should allow the courts to make a determination on this matter. Let's give our courts the opportunity to deal with this matter, whereafter we can then have, if you like, a political discussion about it. I'm waiting for the courts to make a determination on this matter myself, and I'd like it to be done as urgently as possible. I want to assure this House that I more than anyone, want this matter to be resolved as soon as possible so that all of us as South Africans can get on with our lives and we can get on with the task of governance in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. President, in 2009, the SIU in fact found an improper and a corrupt relationship between government officials and the Bosasa Group. For the past 15 years, Bosasa has gleaned contracts well over 12 billion rands from various government departments. In fact, in 2013, Treasury sought to cancel all contracts with Bosasa and have the company blacklisted. But your now current campaign manager for CR17, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, was then in his fundraising effort, would have known that because he was the finance minister at the time. Mr. President, in my hand, I'm holding a letter that was sent by your party, the ANC, saying to Bosasa, we want to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to your organization for this donation and the continued financial support to the organization that is the ANC. Now, Mr. President, your organization has received 3 million rands. You were deputy president of the ANC at the time. I want to remind you of the basics in law. If you are in possession of money deemed from criminal activities, that is also a crime. So, what I want to know, Mr. President, will you undertake today to ensure that the ANC repays to the fiscus all the money received from Bosasa for the past 15 years, as those monies were in fact derived from proceeds of corruption? Will you commit to the people of this country?
Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, one of the observations that were made by the public protector against me was that when Honorable, I almost said minister, not yet, and maybe never to be. When Honorable Maimani played the same sort of gimmick the last time, the public protector in one of the paragraphs in her report said, Mr. President, when that was done to you, you should have actually asked for the copy and said, I'd like to reflect on it and I'll deal with it later. And she said, that's what you should have done. She and I differ on outcomes and conclusions, but in this case, I want to take her counsel and say to Honorable Maimani, please give me that letter and I will reflect on it. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order, members.
Madam Speaker,
Order. 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 The Honorable Steenhuisen, you are on your feet.
Madam Speaker, it was a supplementary question. It's only 2 paragraphs long. We don't mind waiting while the President reads and he can then answer it.
No, Honorable Steenhuisen. The President responded by saying, I want to take time to look at what you are presenting. So, can we proceed? Honorable Maimani, you can't have a second bite at a supplementary.
No, it's not a second bite.
You are making me clever.
I just want clarity. The President has committed to get back to this House.
Yes, he will.
Know when.
Honorable members, no. I heard somebody say Mbusuga. That is completely out. Please don't use that language here. We will not degenerate. Honorable Maimani, Honorable President, can you put a date?
No, Honorable Speaker, I said I will go back to Honorable Maimani. That's what I said. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Maimani, we will undertake to follow up on your behalf on when this response to your question comes. Thank you. The next supplementary, Honorable President, comes from the Honorable Mente.
Enkosi Speaker. Through you, Speaker, President, with the South African economy, where we do not have money, we wish not to waste money having commissions that will emanate from other commissions. So that one is just out of order. Number two, when the Zondo Commission report comes, we would like your swift action, like you did with Moyane, like you did with Nomgcobo. And we don't want wishy-washy. And then number three, where we are most putting our focus on is your own role that you are playing within the whole corruption saga. You said you will take your son to the police if you find out that he has taken money. You didn't do that. Now we want you to tell us, do you know of any other contribution from Bosasa to your son, to the trust of your companies, or anyone that has contributed to you, and you tell us how much, and is that disclosed to Parliament?
Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Obviously, we don't want money, the state's money, to be wasted on a number of commissions. That one can confirm, and it is for that reason that I said to Honorable Maimani, we don't need to establish another commission. These commissions usually cost well over 100 million and more, and we should not be having a plethora of commissions. In fact, our people want the work of the commissions to come to an end so that we can all get on with our lives. So I couldn't agree more with you. With regard to the Zondo Commission, once the Zondo Commission has issued their report, everybody will be informed of the report, and we will make sure that the recommendations are indeed taken forward and implemented. In relation to my son, the only answer I can give you is that, as I said in this parliament, he had a clear, pure business relationship with the Bosasa company in relation to work that they were doing in Uganda, and it had nothing to do with the work that was being done here in South Africa between himself and the state. So in my view, there's not much more that needs to be followed up, because the contract, which has been seen also by the public protector, clearly talks about the business that he was doing with them in Uganda. And he has himself gone ahead to say he's learning in business, and this is one relationship that he regrets having gotten into. So that puts that aside. With regard to other funds or monies contributed by Bosasa, I am not aware of them. I do not know of them having been contributed to the campaign or whatever trust. The one that I finally got to know about after the fact is the 500,000, which is now a subject of discussion or litigation between ourselves and the public protector in the course of our country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Shabalala.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, the leader of the opposition should have given us the letter written by the leader then, Helen Zille, receiving an amount of 200,000 from the Guptas itself. That's the letter you should be concerned about, not the letters from the ANC. You must not throw stones when you live in a glass house. Honorable President.
Point of order.
Honorable Steenhuisen, what is the point of order? Why are you interrupting the member?
Because this is questions to the President, not questions to the Leader of the Opposition.
That is not a point of order. Please continue.
You're out of order. In fact, DA is bankrupt. It's running out of ideas nowadays. President, the question speaks about you duplicating processes. We've got the Zondo Commission that is ongoing, and would want to know, do we really need to duplicate the processes unless the DA doesn't have confidence in the process of the Zondo Commission itself? The question
Honorable
is...
Shabalala, hold on again. Honorable Maimani, you rose. What is the point of order?
No, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to answer the question if the member wants to direct.
No.
I don't have time to
No,
ask
honorable member, please take your seat.
We have nothing to hide.
No, please take your seat.
This is money that was stolen.
No, please take your seat. Honorable members. Order, 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 order. Honorable members, we will not disturb a member who makes a supplementary. In that supplementary, in that 1 minute, this member has a right to say whatever and to conclude with a question. Please proceed, me.
Honorable President, would you please remind South Africans at large what measures has government taken to investigate allegations of corruption of state capture and to punish those who found guilty? I thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable, the President.
Point of order.
Your point of order, Ntate
We
Ndlozi?
should be asking questions, not memories, like remind people. What is the question? The ANC is abusing us. I thought you have ideas.
Order.
there's no
Honorable
question.
Ndlozi, please take your seat.
Speaker.
That is not a point of order. Please take your seat. Please take your seat. Order, members. Order. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, indeed, we have set it out very clearly, even in our SONA pronouncements, that the whole process of renewal has to mean that we've got to rebuild our institutions, particularly the criminal justice institutions, rebuild them to a point where they are able to deal with acts of corruption and criminality. And the Zondo Commission is executing a very important task, which in the end will culminate, yes, in the recommendations that they will come up with. And the National Prosecuting Agency, or Authority rather, is also being strengthened on an ongoing basis so that it is able to pursue those who may well find themselves to have been involved in corrupt activities. We are irrevocably committed to this path. It is a path of renewal, a path of rebuilding the institutions in our country and make sure that the rule of law becomes the order of the day in South Africa and that we uphold the tenets that are clearly stated in our Constitution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Your last supplementary, Honorable President, comes from the Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, my understanding is these commissions and investigations are very selective. And I know that you want to deal with the issue of corruption and state capture or any looting of state resources. Now, please tell us, Mr. President, why hasn't anybody to date, and even from this House, been charged criminally for the VBS Bank looting? Could you please tell us, Mr. President, and what you're going to do about it, Mr. President?
Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, I know that there is a great deal of impatience in the nation, and a measure of impatience that almost wants to see the roles that the executive plays and the roles of independent institutions that we have set up in terms of our constitutions conflated. And we cannot have a situation like that where the executive is the one that is the executioner of, for instance, the justice or prosecution. We have institutions like the NPA, we have investigative institutions like the police, like the Hawks, and like the criminal intelligence. And all those are institutions that were clearly and carefully set up by our Constitution to deal with the matters that are germane to the area that they operate in. Now, the National Prosecuting Agency is the one that initiates prosecutions, following, of course, investigation and, say, arrests by the police. They are the ones who we agreed will be independent. who we agreed that they will execute their task without favor, without fear, and without prejudice. Let us allow them, as they are rebuilding themselves, repositioning themselves, refashioning themselves, to do the work that they are constitutionally mandated to do. And let us not interfere in the work that they have to do. I would like to give them space. I'd like to give them all the resources that they need even to do this work. So it is they who must take the decisions of who needs to be prosecuted. It cannot be the president. It cannot be the deputy president. It cannot be the cabinet. It must be the prosecuting authority that will take that decision. The day the president does so, it basically means we have gone backwards once again. It basically means that we are conflating the roles that an independent agency has to play as well as the executive authority has to play. So, Honorable Imam, I hear you, and I know that there's a great deal of impatience across the nation because they want to see justice being done. And indeed, justice will be done. I have that in my mind that they will act because we've appointed good people. The head of the National Prosecuting Authority is very capable in her job. She was carefully selected, and she will act together with her other colleagues. And now they are rebuilding, refashioning, retraining, and they will be able to take action. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was the last supplementary of question 2. We move on to question 3. It was put to you by the Honorable Malema.
Honorable members, Honorable Speaker, following the release of the Public Protector's report into allegations against the President, there's been much interest in the country about the funding and the operation of what I would call the CR17 campaign. As I have already indicated, the Public Protector's report, as I indicated already, the Public Protector's report is currently under judicial review, and the courts, our independent courts, will make a determination in this regard. And some people have used this opportunity, quite correctly in my view, to debate the issue of the funding of political funding. And this is an important debate that needs to ensue in our country. I have also initiated myself a discussion within the political party that I need. I initiated that discussion at our last National Executive Committee, and when I reported to the National Executive, I said, this whole matter actually has put forward a question that we now need to address as a political party. But now others have a more sinister agenda, using leaked information selectively to undermine the positive changes that have been brought about in our country since the 54th National Conference. Now, I need to say the CR17 campaign was a legitimate, forward-looking, and necessary effort to promote the renewal of the governing party and broader society, and it was undertaken under difficult conditions. In its funding and its activities, there was no wrongdoing. Let me repeat, no wrongdoing, no criminality, and no abuse of public funds or resources. It is important that we should note that those who contributed to the campaign, whether as organizers, as volunteers, as members of the ANC, as service providers, or indeed as donors, of one sort or another, including myself, did so out of a genuine concern for the future of our country. If there were members of the executive who were part of the campaign who were involved in fundraising, they did so as individual party members, exercising their democratic and constitutional right. And in this regard, let us be clear, they owe no apology for what they did. Now, for what they did, that is a matter between themselves and their party, as it is a matter between myself as president of the African National Congress and my party. And it is for that reason that I have initiated that discussion in the African National Congress. Now, as things currently stand, there are no rules or regulations in place for the disclosure of donations for internal party leadership contests. I am not aware of them. Now, this matter, let me be clear, this matter is now before our courts. It is a matter that is going to be discussed by our courts, the extent to which declarations or disclosures could have needed to be made for internal party political campaigning. Now, we will wait for the determination of the court in that regard, and once the court has declared, we will then be able to take the matter forward. I am that open enough to say, I want the court to make a determination on this matter. Nor is there a provision for disclosure of such information in the Executive Ethics Code or in the Code of Ethical Conduct and Disclosure of Members' Interests for Assembly and Permanent Council members. I am sure that Honorable Malema would agree that it would be unreasonable and potentially prejudicial to expect the disclosure of such information until such time that all candidates and all parties are held to the same requirements of disclosure and transparency. Now, honorable members, honorable Speaker, in this regard, you know, the Political Funding Act, which I signed into law earlier this year, does regulate public and private funding of political parties and requires disclosure of donations accepted. Now, while this act does not extend to the funding of internal party leadership contests, this is perhaps the appropriate time for this House to consider whether it is necessary and desirable for funding of internal party contests to be disclosed and regulated. This is the time, because it is this House that must come up with whatever solutions. Do we want internal party political contests from the governing party right through to even the smallest party that is represented here, that there are internal contests? Because let's take it, let's accept it. In political parties, there are contestations for leadership. Honorable Malema may be contested by another member in the party, and when they contest, yes, no, but it can happen. I'm not wishing that it should happen, but it can happen. But it can happen if, let's put it this way. Honorable Shibambo is Honorable Malema's deputy. Now, heaven forbid, one day it happens that Honorable Shibambo decides that he actually wants to contest. He wants to contest the position of CIC. and he says, I am tired of being a deputy. I want to contest. And the same thing may happen to Honorable Maimane. It may happen to even myself. So when that happens, you then want to say get the resources so that you can topple the person at the head. Now the proposal, the question I would pose is, do we want, this House must discuss it, do we want those contests that we could get engaged in to be regulated so that there is disclosure of what Honorable Shibambo will raise as he contests the CIC?
Speaker.
Honorable Shibambo, are you on a point of order?
On a point of order, I think the most appropriate example you must use is Honorable Didi contesting him, because that is most likely. Not this one is
Thank you,
He
sir.
was still stable.
I'm sure he's hearing you,
He
but
was
that is
still
not a
stable.
point of order. Please proceed, Mr. President.
Well, maybe to make you feel better, do we want, when Honorable Mabuza contests me as president of the ANC, that the resources that he might raise to be regulated, and to be regulated by an act of parliament? That is the question we have to raise, that we have to discuss amongst ourselves. So I would therefore like to suggest that this parliament take responsibility for ensuring that the same standards of accountability and transparency are applied to all leaders, are applied across the board, if that is what we want to do. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much, President. Just quickly to remind your members that in the VBS scandal, 99.8% of people implicated in that story are ANC members. So they must stop being tatarach and saying other things here. Now,
Order,
President,
members.
you were elected on a ticket of transparency. And you were elected on the ticket of anti-corruption as a man who's not scared to open up to society and the country and say these are the activities we're involved in. So now, why do you have a problem in disclosing the names of people who have made contribution to you? Even if you were doing that for political party purpose or contest in the party. You were the deputy president, you are the president, and you can't take leave from yourself. You can't say today I'm on leave. I'm not a state deputy president, I'm a party deputy president. At all material times, you are the leader of our country. And the sooner you come to the reality that not everybody is a president of South Africa, and stop comparing yourself with other candidates. We do not have interest on them, they've not won. You are the president, and you shall be held with high standards because you are the president. You must never be shocked when we don't ask similar questions to nobodies, because you are the #1 citizen who occupies the highest office. And therefore, to compare yourself with nobodies, you are reducing not only yourself, but the office you are occupying. But this one, the last one, you'll answer me outside. How many of my members did you give money?
The Honorable, the President. Order, members. Order. Order.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, let me start off with the first question and say that yes, indeed, transparency is absolutely necessary. And I have no difficulty or problem with the issue of transparency. The act that my lawyers took in asking the court to seal some of those documents is because the documents that were then, particularly the bank statements that were then made available to the public protector, were of a number of accounts emanating from as early as 2014, when there was no, say, CR17 campaign. And what got to us was just the confidentiality of the information of a number of people. You know, bank accounts are very sort of sensitive type of documents, where all of us in our bank accounts, we transact with whoever and so forth, and that is quite private and all that. Now, they went as early as 2014, and during a period where there was no campaign, and that is what our lawyers felt needed, yes, to be sealed. Now, in the course of all that, it then encompasses everything. Now, we are going to do a review of all that, and I would like Honorable Malema to keep an eye on the issue of transparency. And of course, you're absolutely right. As President of the Republic, yes, I know I'll be held to a much higher standard. You're absolutely right. And I would say that, you know, you say I should not see myself as being equal to everybody. I am equal to everybody, but I am held to a much higher standard. And I accept that. Let us allow this period of evaluating this whole process through the courts, and thereafter I will be able to take a view and indeed see how best we handle this situation. Because indeed, I do want to uphold the principle of being transparent, of being straight and being honest, indeed, even on this very difficult matter. Now, you want to know how many members of your EFF we gave money to. Now, let me say, the EFF put me in a very embarrassing position because in the end, those members have now been shifted aside. Now, these two colleagues, and I see them as colleagues, by the way, they served in the NCOP, and they were my most vociferous opponents and critics in the NCOP. And when, as members of parliament, right across the board, when we discuss, there is a point where there is the question of humanity, where there is humanity, where we interact with each other beyond even party lines and see ourselves as human beings. When these two members had great difficulties, which they articulated, we felt that help was needed and they were given help. The help was not connected to anything, as I have done with a number of other members as well. So it was out of a deep generosity, not on your side, admittedly. So that's what it is. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Maimani.
Madam Speaker, would the President just like to share with the House what his interest rate is?
That's not a point of order. Honorable Ndlozi, are you on a point of order?
Well, your non-transparency seems to be now toxic to the entire country because people receive money, they don't say who gave the money, even if Parliament says they must declare. So your non-disclosure, which you said you are about, is becoming toxic and is affecting
Honorable
all of us.
Ndlozi.
I don't think it's a joke.
Honorable Ndlozi. Honorable Ndlozi, that was not a point of order. The Honorable Maimani, you have the second supplementary.
Thank you. Mr. President, what we know so far, I mean, I hear members of the EFF have resigned, but we also know equally so that there were 4 members of this House who received money from CR17. Honorable Siwea, Njaveni, Mbalula, and Kotwa.
Please continue, your time is running.
No, I can't, Speaker. As you can hear, I can't.
Order, members. Order. Order. Honorable Minister Akaku Muntu Petayo in the House. No, honorable member, that will not be allowed. Honorable Maimane, please proceed.
Maybe she's complaining because she didn't get paid.
No, honorable Maimane,
sorry,
your time is...
No. What I want to know is that the president has a prerogative to appoint cabinet ministers. And that decision must pass the test of rationality. I'm not interested in some ways as to who donated. We now know who money went to. I want to know whether in his mind, when he was choosing his cabinet, did the factors of people being paid come into account when he chose his cabinet? Or was it rewards for the campaign that they led in CR17?
Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Maimane, the answer is no. I don't operate like that. The issue of the amounts that were deposited into people's accounts had a variety of reasons. A number of them were active participants in the campaign, and they were meant to utilize the money for purely legitimate purposes of making sure that the campaign moves forward. And with all the colleagues that you refer to, there was no expectation whatsoever for any recognition, any return, and the decision to appoint members into the executive is a process that the leadership of the African National Congress gets involved in. It's a process that the president applies his mind to very carefully, and what people will have done in whatever campaign and role they have played has nothing whatsoever to do with the reason why they are appointed. People are appointed in terms of their own capability, their own merit, and no other reason. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Nkwankwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The question will be taken over by the General, please.
The Honorable Honorable Holomisa. Dicela Okupaula. Honorable members, when the person who presses, I'm going to let the General take over this question. But generally, if you are in the House, you cannot delegate. In this instance, there is no rule that specifically deals with supplementaries. So I'm going to allow you, General, to do it.
I even pressed before him.
No, I am looking at my order here.
And Honorable President, the nation and the world have witnessed the ugly public spat between the president and the public protector. Not only is this situation embarrassing for South Africa, but it also does not augur well for the president's new dawn, for your role as custodian of the Constitution and investor sentiments. This Parliament has the necessary powers and authority to look into the public protector's investigation and should hear the matter and deliberate the public protector's remedial action. If you agree, would you be willing to subject yourself to such a process and withdraw the matter from the courts for now, in the interest of transparency? Please.
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Holomisa, I am sensitive to the issue that you have raised. I am equally concerned as President about these happenings between the President as well as the Public Protector It does not augur well for our democracy. We should not have important offices in our nation at loggerheads with each other. It's just like, for instance, if the president is at loggerheads with the judiciary on a number of matters that could have been solved in a different way. It so happens that the findings of the public protector we have found are challengeable in law and in fact. And it is for this reason that my advice has been that we should actually go to an arbiter like our court. We should not be alarmed when things like these happen. We've got a constitution that regulates the relationship between the various institutions or organs of the state. And as long as everything will be handled in terms of our constitution and in terms of the law, we should not be alarmed that the wheels will come off. Yes, we should be concerned politically that there is this spat that is taking place, but in reality, we should rely on the tried and tested ability of our judiciary, which we put in place to be the arbiter in disputes whenever organs of the state don't agree and whenever individuals don't agree or individuals and organs of the state. So this is what I would call par for the course. It is concerning, but it is a valley that we've got to go through so that in the end we're able to test the decisions of one organ of state against what may possibly be slightly different when examined by another organ of state. So much as you are concerned, as I am concerned, let us allow this process to go on. It may well be, Honorable Holomisa, that your wish is finally granted, that this matter finally comes back to Parliament and Parliament is given the opportunity to adjudicate on this matter. But right now, if they say, as they say in law, in limine, just in the meantime, let us allow this process to unfold. And the good part of it is that it should be done in terms of our law, our constitution, and in terms of the protocols and traditions that we have now evolved as a new democracy in our country. Many years later, we will look back at this and we will admire the constitutional statehood that we have, that this constitutional statehood has served South Africa extremely well. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your last supplementary is from the Honorable Mohammed Hlala.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, if in a process of a plethora of investigations emerging today in our country, there's any...
Honorable Ndlozi, stop hectoring the member on the... Stop hectoring the member speaking. You are disturbing her train. No, please proceed, Mayor Mohammed Hlala, and address the chair.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm not going to be tempted. Honorable President, if in the process of a plethora of investigations emerging, and we see today in our country, there's any form of fraud or corruption found, will the President act? Can the President also assure and take the country into confidence in terms of his involvement on the CR17 campaign funding, and also if the funding was not from the taxpayers' coffers? Thank you, President.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Mohammed Hlala, yes, I am able to say that if there is to be found any wrongdoing, anything that was done against our laws, yes, in the campaign, yes, I will be prepared and willing to act without any doubt or equivocation. And on the issue of whether in the end was there any taxpayers' money utilized? As I said earlier, there was no taxpayers' money utilized in the CR17 campaign. That I can state, and if it is found to be so, we will then take action. The extent of my involvement, yes, it's a question that has been raised by the public protector, and I would like that to be examined by, for instance, our courts in this regard, because it is a matter that is now being discussed and debated in our courts, and it is going to emanate from, did I know about the Bosasa 500,000 donation or not? That matter is being entertained, is being discussed, being adjudicated through the various litigations, and the public protector has taken a view on that, and we have taken a different view. So I would like to say that that whole matter of the extent to which, yes, I was involved or not involved, is a matter that needs to be properly ventilated and clarified. And in due course, we will be able also to give a very clear view on this matter. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We proceed to question number 4. That was put to you by the Honorable Dr. Dlomo.
Honorable members, Honorable Speaker, South Africa has massive inequalities that require policy change. If we are to give our people a better life, we are one of the countries with the highest inequality in the world. The health sector contributes significantly to a country's inequality status. Therefore, one of our greatest priorities as a nation must be the achievement of universal health coverage, where all our people have equal access to quality health care. This is essential for the achievement of a better quality of life for all South Africans. It is also important for social justice, for equity, and for more productive economy. We have also signed as a country the Sustainable Development Agenda, which calls for the introduction of universal health coverage. We are heading out to New York to the United Nations General Assembly meetings to join other countries who are moving towards the implementation of their own version of universal health coverage. As part of our global commitment, we attended and contributed our input at the G20 summit in Osaka in Japan in June of this year. At the summit, we, together with low and medium income countries, were urged, and this matter was put on the agenda by the Prime Minister of Japan in the midst of all these other G20 countries. We were urged to move towards universal health coverage for our countries. We are on track to do this in our country through the National Health Insurance. We have global support in moving towards universal health coverage. The Elders Group, which was established by former President Nelson Mandela, has issued a statement in support of our efforts towards national health insurance. And the Elders Group is a group of elders who used to be former presidents and heads of states in various countries around the world. Furthermore, the World Health Organization is greatly supportive of our efforts to introduce universal health coverage, which has been a fundamental demand of the Freedom Charter over 50 years. It is for this reason that we are pursuing an ambitious program to address the problems in our health system alongside the introduction of a national health insurance. Last month, we signed a presidential health compact, which provides a comprehensive, detailed program to improve our public health system. Now, this historic compact was developed together with all key stakeholders in the health sector, including health professionals, health organizations, labor, business, statutory councils, civil society, and the users of the health system and academia. Each stakeholder is committed to practical measures to strengthen our health system. This is essential if we are to ensure that each clinic, each community health center and hospital in the public and private sector is NHI ready. The NHI fund, which we are going to be setting up as set out in the bill that is now going to come to Parliament, will contract only those hospitals and clinics that meet international quality standards. This approach implies that we will be undertaking measures to strengthen the health system as we implement the NHI. We are focusing our improvements in human resources, access to medicines and vaccines, building and maintenance of infrastructure, and the quality, the safety, and the quality of health services. We are working together with stakeholders to improve financial management and strengthen governance, oversight, and accountability. A vital component of this plan is to ensure that the National Health Information System guides the way policies and strategies and investments are made. Once passed into law, the National Health Insurance Bill, which will become an act, will go a long way towards achieving universal quality health coverage. We will join a community of nations that are moving towards ending inequality in access to quality health care. In South Africa, we are confronting severe inequalities, where around 250 billion rand is spent on the 16% of the population who have access to private health care, while only 220 billion goes towards health care for the rest of the population. But the interesting thing is, even those who are covered by private health care, when their allowances come to an end in their medical aids, they are the first to run to the public healthcare system. They go there for vaccines and a whole number of other requirements. There are those who say we must leave things as they are. And by the way, this 16% get rebates from the government. Therefore, the government subsidizes. It subsidizes even those who say that they've got private health care coverage. Now, we are called upon to retain an unjust system that deprives the majority of South Africans access to doctors, specialists, allied health professionals that are supposed to serve only a few to the exclusion of the rest. And to this, we have to say a unanimous no. This is unfair, it is inefficient, it is unsustainable. We have enough resources in this country to give every man, every woman, every child health care, but we refuse because we want to promote interests of a few to the detriment of the rest. We shall change this, and we are irrevocably committed to changing this. Implementing national health insurance while improving the health system has several benefits. The NHI will increase the resources available to hire more health workers, thus reducing waiting times in hospitals and in clinics. Contracting health professionals from the private sector into NHI will increase access to the services of doctors, specialists, dentists, physiotherapists, psychologists, and many others. Through the more efficient allocation of health resources, The NHI will improve access to medicines, to equipment, reduce drug stockouts, and improve maintenance of facilities. The NHI fund will separate the purchase of health services from the delivery of services, thereby increasing value for money. It will help to ensure that funds, staff, medicine, and equipment are more fairly distributed. It will further enhance the quality of services delivered because all those who receive contracts will be able to provide services of a specified quality. It will also help improve efficiency, transparency, and accountability. Now, as we have done before with all major policy interventions since 1994, we will ensure effective consultation and engagement across society at all stages of this process. The quest for universal health coverage is probably one of the most significant public-private partnerships that we will undertake, and it is essential that all social partners are involved in its design and implementation. It will be implemented incrementally within available resources. The NHI provides an opportunity to fundamentally transform the healthcare system in our country to ensure greater fairness, improved health outcomes, and a more productive workforce. Through the NHI, we will be closer to achieving the demand that was set out by our forebears in the Freedom Charter, that free medical care and hospitalization shall be provided for all. Working together, we are determined to achieve this goal. Now, I had the occasion to listen to Prime Minister Olof Palme of Sweden before he was assassinated, where he told me that the first Prime Minister of their country had ended up in a public hospital. He had had a medical procedure, and it was a ward that accommodated some 4 or 6 people. And the following day, somebody came and laid in the bed next to his, and they started conversing. And he asked him, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "I am a steel worker, and I work in a steel mill somewhere." And the then Prime Minister, Herlande was his name, he then said, "I want to tell you something, my friend. This is exactly what we were working to achieve. That you as a steel worker can come into a hospital and come and lie next to me as the Prime Minister of this country, and both of us can get exactly the same medical health care." Now, this is precisely what this is about. We want to improve and revolutionize our health care, and this is something that we hope to achieve, and it is for this reason that the NHI is also being piloted and being directed from the President's office. We are going to make sure that the NHI does get implemented, and the bill will be coming to Parliament, and we hope that this House is going to revolutionize healthcare delivery in our country and in our lifetime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Lomo, the Honorable.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. Honorable President, there has been some concerns, and we need to attend to them, raised by some South Africans based on the reports of the performances of some SOEs, which are related to governance, challenges, and financial irregularities. These concerns therefore claim that the NHI will become a vehicle for corruption instead of improving access and quality of healthcare for all South Africans. Can our Honorable President assure this House and South Africans and the world that NHI will have stringent measures to guard against any possible corruption in its implementation? I thank you.
Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Dr. Dlomo, and honorable members, we have learned a great number of lessons out of the experiences that we've been through with our SOEs. We are now committed to improving governance of the running of our SOEs, to improving management, and to improving financial management as well. What we can say is that as we reform and rebuild our state-owned enterprises and we improve the architecture, one of the things that we are going to be focusing on is to ensure that we root out corruption of any sort and nature. And when we come to the NHI, we are going to make sure that we keep a hawk's eye on the finances of the NHI as the NHI fund does its work. We will make sure that the lessons that we have learned in our state-owned enterprises, the things that have happened there do not repeat themselves. This is what I can promise you. We will want to run a clean shop in our NHI fund. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable van Staden.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, I hear what you say about the NHI. But what is your reaction to the fact that certain companies who's listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange lost altogether an amount of almost 14 billion rand on close of business last Tuesday, due to the fact that the National Health Insurance Bill was tabled in Parliament the Thursday before. And because of that, in the interest of South Africa, to prevent any further financial losses in our economy, don't you think it will be better and wise to abolish this program because of the fact that there's now problems in Britain with the NHS system? There was problems in Ireland with the system, and it was abolished 4 years after it was implemented there, and we also saw in the past problems in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable van Staden, yes, I did note that a number of companies that are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange lost some value as a result of the introduction of the NHI bill. And that largely happened because there are people in our country who are against transformation, who are bad-mouthing the National Health Insurance. They send negative messages, alarmist messages, when we are seeking to ensure that there is social justice. Now, those people don't realize that we could lose everything if we do not introduce a measure like this one. And the loss, and I feel sorry for those who have lost money, but losses on the stock exchange happen from time to time. Sometimes it can take a president of another country to say something and the stock market can be wiped out. Sometimes something positive can be said, it goes up. So that is the vagaries of the market. Now, we cannot say because of that, we should now abandon the 84% of our people who need to gain and benefit from national health care. We cannot say that. We need to come up with programs that are aligned to advancing the interests of the majority of our people. What I do know is that when finally the real facts about the NHI do sink in and people understand what this NHI is all about, those stocks will start going up. And I look forward to you coming back here and saying to me, President, now that people understand NHI, the stocks of those companies have gone up, and I want you to thank me when that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, I agree with you that universal healthcare coverage is an ideal that we must all strive for. In fact, it is an imperative 25 years into our democracy that we afford all the citizens of this country equal access to healthcare services. Now, Honorable President, you mentioned 220 billion rand for, and I'll use your words, for the rest, which is the money that is used in public healthcare facilities. Are you satisfied, Mr. President, and I'll use your words again, that we are getting value for money in terms of the 220 billion rand? Because if you go out there to those called the rest, they will complain bitterly about the lack of services in primary healthcare clinics, in hospitals, waiting long hours, waiting for operations for 6 months. Should we not, while we are introducing the system, monitor very, very closely what is happening at our institutions that are being funded from the fiscus? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Singh, one of the reasons why we are opting for the national health coverage is to make sure that our people do get value for money. Because right now, I would agree with you, the majority of our people are not getting value for money. Our healthcare system is under a great deal of stress. If you go and talk to our people who are either waiting in the waiting queues in hospitals and clinics, they will tell you that they are not entirely satisfied with the healthcare that they are getting. But things are improving. We are opening new hospitals. We are equipping our hospitals with the economic recovery stimulus package that we announced. We needed to employ more doctors. We needed to employ more nurses. We needed to equip our clinics and hospitals with bed linen, with beds where there was none. We've pumped money into that system and things are beginning to move, they're beginning to improve. The national health system is going to add to that improvement trajectory that is bound to follow. And when we are able to manage the finances properly, the procurement system properly, and the human resources, we will then be able, and the management of the hospitals, of course, we will then be able to have a healthcare system that will be able to bring social justice to our people. I have no doubt whatsoever that once we reposition our healthcare through the healthcare coverage that we're talking about, our hospitals will function better, our clinics will function better. At the signing of the compact, we had occasion with all these professionals, the professors, the doctors, you name it, the scientists and the workers in hospitals and all that. We had occasion to look at an ideal hospital, and we all agreed that this is the type of hospital that we want. And we committed ourselves to ensuring that we do get that type of dispensation in our hospitals. So we've built a model, an ideal, and we are going to be working on an ongoing basis to achieve that model. And the national health insurance is going to give us the wings, the mechanics, the mechanism to do precisely that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Mkalipi.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, the public health care system is in disarray. Only last year, the department was short of over 18,000 nurses, 2,250 doctors, and 150 dentists. In the Eastern Cape alone, there were 110 health facilities, that is clinics and hospitals, which were without electricity. The rollout of the NHI will be meaningless and will be only amounted to posturing if it is not preceded by a massive investment in public health infrastructural development, in employment and the retraining of medical practitioners. Now, Mr. President, what is your government doing to resolve this crisis in public health care?
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Mkalipi, what I have been saying about the benefits of national health insurance, is meant to precisely address the challenges that you are talking about. For starters, the economic recovery and stimulus package that we announced is meant to address the issue of the shortage of staff, doctors, nurses, dentists. Admittedly, we may not be able to employ all those various thousands that we need this year, but on an ongoing basis, as the fund is set up, as the process moves on, we will be able to employ the professionals that we need in our hospitals, the workers that we need in our hospitals. The compact that we signed, and I'd like members to familiarize themselves with it, addresses precisely all these issues, including the issue of infrastructure rollout, to ensure that we have functioning clinics and hospitals that have access to electricity, to water, that have good management systems, and this is going to be possible once we kickstart the national health insurance to ensure that we do, yes, have the funding, we do have the determination, and some of this will be done on a programmatic basis, where we will be able to see progress as we move on. We are under no illusion that the national health insurance is going to be the immediate panacea to all the challenges that we face in healthcare. It is going to be a process, it's going to be a long process, but we are committed to embarking on this journey to improve our national healthcare system, and we will be improving infrastructure as well. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was the last of the supplementaries for question 4. We move on to question number 5, put to you by the Honorable Hlengwa.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, the acceleration of land reform is essential for the transformation of society, particularly in relation to tackling poverty and growing our economy. The Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture, which I appointed in September 2018 to provide expert advice on the critical task of land reform, has produced several far-reaching recommendations to ensure that we correct the skewed distribution of land in our country and also address the issue of land use and utilization. This is necessary if we are to reduce inequality. Through providing poor South Africans with land on which to farm, to live and to run businesses, we will be able to break the cycle of poverty in which many people are currently trapped. The report of the advisory panel has been presented to Cabinet and has been made available to the public. The report provides a detailed and critical assessment on progress since 1994, and it also outlines some of the weaknesses in our policies and programs. This report recommends legal mechanisms to recognize, to register, to record, and to enforce a continuum of land rights so that all our people become right holders. The panel has called on government to immediately identify well-located as well as unused or underutilized land and buildings for the purposes of urban settlement and to prioritize poor tenants for upgrading their rights. The panel argues that expropriation without compensation should happen. And it also said expropriation without compensation by itself is not a solution to land reform, but is just one of the means and the mechanisms of acquiring land. The report goes much further to address questions of who should benefit and promotes a participatory and democratic area-based approach to identifying land needs. The panel's recommendations complement and reinforce the work being done by the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform that is chaired by the Deputy President. The IMC is making progress in the development of National Special Development Framework, which will guide our efforts to ensure that land use and planning is developmental and transforms our people's lives. The work that is being done by the Deputy President as well as the IMC has identified a number of land parcels that need to be given to our people so that they can have access to land and to work. Part of it is through redistribution, part of it is through restitution. Now the IMC, the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure has released 100 parcels of land for land restitution purposes. For the remaining parcels of land use studies are being finalized, which include land identified for human settlements. Progress is being made in the development of an integrated model for farmer support. The model entails the provision of financial and non-financial support through the value chain. It is intended that, together with the work already underway, the panel's recommendations will inform the finalization of a comprehensive, far-reaching and transformative land reform program. And the work that has been done by the panel obviously will be the work that will complement the work that we are doing here in Parliament in dealing with the issue of the land question. Cabinet still needs to consider the findings and recommendations of the panel, the report having been presented to Cabinet, Cabinet having released it for debate and discussion throughout the country, will thereafter be able to settle down and give consideration to the recommendations, after which it will then make a pronouncement on the implementation of this report. And we're hoping that this will also dovetail with the work that is being done here in the National Assembly on the land question. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Shengwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, you will agree that one of the challenges with the report is that there was no consultation in some of the areas in which it did its work. And the point in case, of course, is the issue of Ingonyama Trust. Never met with the board, the trustee, the originator of the bill, or the residents, nor those who administer the land under the jurisdiction of Ingonyama Trust. But secondly, it's been the naive political ploy to dirty the Ingonyama Trust as part of the deal which saw the IFP contest elections in '94, which you, Mr. President, are in a position now to clarify that was not the case. But interestingly enough, the person who was there, Mr. de Klerk, issued a statement yesterday as part of your sufficient consensus arrangements where he explains that Ingonyama Trust was not part of the deal that saw the IFP contest elections. I can hand it over to you as well since you're receiving documents today, Mr. President. But what is important, Mr. President, is I put it to you that do you still stand by the commitments that you made insofar as Ingonyama Trust is concerned, vis-a-vis now the recommendations which say it must be reviewed or repealed, which we certainly don't agree with. But you are on record somewhere as having made commitments that that land would not be touched. And so I ask you, Mr. President, to now take those of us who live on Ingonyama Trust land, who are beneficiaries of that land, and the majority of the people living there who are beneficiaries, you're not going to subject us to a process which takes away what it is that makes us who we are on the land that we live on. I thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Shengwa. I'm able to say that the Cabinet discussed this matter just yesterday, reflected on what we need to do in relation to our dealings with the Ingonyama Trust. And this was prompted by a letter which I received from His Majesty the King, which I will be responding to. But Cabinet decided that we should appoint and send, I will be sending a number of my colleagues in Cabinet to go and have extensive discussions with various role players in KZN. And Minister Mantashe will be part of that delegation. Minister Mtembu, Lamula, Didiza, Dr. Zweli Mkhize will be working with our Premier as well as various MECs. They have been given directives by myself to go to engage with various role players in KZN about this matter and come back and report to me and to Cabinet. The issue that you raise about no consultation is a matter that I note, and clearly this is going to be a process of ensuring that there is consultation, there is proper discussion, and I want thoroughgoing discussions on this matter to ensue so that we are able to come to a conclusion. Remembering that there have been two entities, the High Panel Review Report, which was led by President Kgalema Motlanthe, former President Kgalema Motlanthe, and the other one, which I appointed the advisory panel, and the process that is also being led by the Deputy President. All these have come up with certain recommendations that now need to be discussed. What I did say is that there will not be any arbitrary action that will be taken, yes, on the Ngonyama Trust. We will need to sit down and discuss with all the key role players so that everybody becomes part of the solution. That is what I am able to say to yourself. So the team will be going to engage with people like yourself and a whole range of other people. But I will be responding to His Majesty the King as he wrote to me. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable President. The Honorable Malema.
Thank you, President. Don't you subscribe to democratic means of ownership of the land? And if you do, does Ngonyama Trust represent that democratic way of ownership of the land? Because there are no holy cows here. All of us, king, queens, chiefs, must be subjected to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. All of us must serve that Constitution. And therefore, President, if you subscribe to the democratic means of ownership of the land, do you agree with the recommendations of former President Kgalema Motlanthe's panel? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Malema. Yes, I do subscribe to the democratic processes of ownership of a whole range of assets in our country. And in this regard, the issue of dealing with the Ngonyama Trust is a matter that we've got to approach in the way that I've outlined. There needs to be proper discussion and consultation. And consultation is part of a democratic process. It is not something that should be seen as being outside a democratic process. We've always been able to resolve various problems and challenges through discussions, through consensus building, where there's always been give and take. And this, in the end, would be an opportunity for us to do precisely that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Maimani.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have been engaged with communities all across the country who have made claims for land. One is such as Gwatyu, and there are many others. Today, your government has been found against in the Constitutional Court. I want to read to you what the Constitutional Court in fact says. It says that your government jeopardizes not only the rights of land claimants, but the constitutional security and future of all. It in fact proceeds to say, more accurately, South Africans have been waiting for centuries. The department's failure to practically manage and expedite land reform measures in accordance to the constitutional and statutory provisions has profoundly exacerbated the intensity of the debate and the bitterness in our country. It concludes by saying, it is the institutional incapacity of the department to do what the statute and the constitution requires of it that lies at the heart of this colossal
Your
crisis.
question.
So my question is, Mr. President, why, if the judges are saying the issue is not the Constitution, does your party continue to want to amend Section 25 of the Constitution?
Mr. President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Maimani, the judgment you are referring to was discussed by Cabinet yesterday. And we were all rather sad that the events that the judge spoke about actually happened. And we vowed that we have seen the end of this. It should never ever happen again, where the government of the Republic of South Africa is seen as an obstacle through its own inefficiency, incapability, and incompetence to see this type of thing happening. Now, I got involved, so you know, with another, or I was made to intervene in another case, and the Deputy President has also been able to intervene in others, where the communities had waited for almost 15 years. And we were able to intervene and get departments to work together. What we have had as a government system has been a situation where we work in silos. We've been working in silos, and departments don't talk to each other for years on end. We're bringing that to an end. And we are saying we now need to have joined up government, where government departments are able to work together from the ministerial level right down to the officials at the lower end, where as we approach any issue that impacts on the lives of our people, we act jointly, we do it together, and we find ways in which we can support and assist one another. So the situation that you described was clearly outlined in Cabinet, and we are going to ensure that that comes to an end. The issue of Section 25, Honorable Maimani, is going to be finalized by this National Assembly, and let us engage in that debate. I look forward to the debate that will ensue here as we deal with the issue of amending Section 25 or not so. Let us engage in that and sharpen our wits so that we bring cogent arguments as to why it should happen and why it should not happen. So I'm saying, let us wait for that moment. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, sir. The Honorable Breed.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Mr. President, two of the members of the advisory panel released a supplementary report.
Yes.
Have you considered the content of this report, and will you take their recommendations into account? Specifically looking at the fact that the original report ignores targets set out by the NDP, ignores the decline of commercial farmers, ignores the state's past failures with regard to land reform, and fails to take into account the economic impact of expropriation without compensation that we have felt already. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. The Cabinet has received the report. And in receiving the report, as they presented that report, we had Mr. Dan Creek, who has issued, together with Mr. Serfontein, they've issued an alternative report or proposals. Cabinet is going to consider both. It will consider both and debate on both, and it will deal with the issues that you are highlighting, the impact on the economy, food security, and the various issues that they have raised. Because they have raised cogent issues that need to be addressed by the cabinet, and indeed they need to be discussed and addressed by everyone else. So they will be considered. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We go to your last question for the day. It was put to you by the Honorable Dr. Mulder.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, while the Constitution enjoins the President to promote the unity of the nation, it is the role and the responsibility of all South Africans to build a country that belongs to all who live in it. In undertaking my responsibility as the President of the Republic, I am guided in the main by the preamble to our Constitution. Amongst other things, it calls on all of us to heal the divisions of the past, establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights, but also to ensure every citizen is equally protected by the law and free the potential of each person in our country. The achievement of national unity depends on the advancement of equality in all spheres of public and private life. All South Africans must have the same rights and opportunities regardless of race, gender, sex, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language, and birth. Since 1994, we have put in place policies as well as programs to safeguard these rights and advance these opportunities. We have sought to advance the constitutional principle that everyone has the right to use the language and participate in the cultural life of their choice. Given the huge inequality in our society, which is mainly defined along lines of race and gender, the promotion of national unity requires that we take measures to advance those South Africans who have been disadvantaged by unfair discrimination. That is why we have directed public resources towards the poor, why we have implemented employment equity, as well as broad-based black economic empowerment. That is why we have massively expanded access to education, and why we have introduced a national minimum wage. The divisions in our society are not only material, they are also social, cultural, and psychological, but they are also historical. We must therefore deepen dialogue to ensure that South Africans across the racial and other contours of difference establish common ground and that there is solidarity as well as mutual trust. These dialogues must address what it means to be an active and responsible citizen of the Republic of South Africa. It is true that there are minorities that are alienated. Then we need to find the reason why they feel alienated. And I would even say, I would hasten to use the word minorities. I would say there are sort of groups of people who feel that they are alienated. We need to establish whether it is a matter of perception or the consequence of actual experience, and we need to engage in dialogue to address any grievance or concerns that they may have. My experience is that the overwhelming majority of South Africans, regardless of race, class, or gender, support the measures we have undertaken in line with the tenets of our Constitution to address the inequalities of the past and to affirm those who were previously disadvantaged. They are, in many instances, also eager and actively seeking to be part of the solution of building a united nation. They have built a bridge and crossed over it. They understand that we will never achieve a united, peaceful society for as long as racial privilege or other forms of inequality continue to exist in our country. Perhaps it is time for us to challenge this idea of the so-called minorities. It is indeed true that South Africa is made up of different races, it's made up of ethnicities, language groups, religions, but we are all part of the greater South African people. Whatever our individual backgrounds are or circumstances, we are part of the majority. South Africa belongs to all of us equally, and we must all feel that we belong to this South Africa, regardless of the various differences that we may have, either along language lines, regional lines, color lines, or whatever. We are all one nation, and let us begin to act as one nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Dr. Mulder.
Thank you, Honorable President, for your reply. I can assure you the Freedom Front Plus is ready to engage with your government or yourself on the issue of minorities in South Africa, and I think it's time that we do that. The true test of a modern democracy is how you accommodate your minorities. Now, I can assure you that minorities in South Africa is not a perception, it's a reality. When we address inequalities of the past, nobody objects to that. But it's a question of doing the one and not doing the other, what also needs to be done. And if there's a feeling of alienation, I think we should take note of that. You refer to the Constitution, which I understand, and the Constitution is fine. But it's also what you as the President is going to do in South Africa, Honourable President. And the Constitution is quite clear when it says that you need to promote the unity of the nation, and that what will advance the Republic as such. Now, the problem to a certain extent is that we've seen previous leaders of the ruling party that are almost too busy with promoting the unity of the ruling party and not necessarily of the Republic, and that caused a sincere problem. If you talk about minorities in South Africa, it's not only the Afrikaner people that experience a problem.
Order. Mamtandi, please be consistent. If it was me, you would have said, what's the question? What's the question?
Honorable...
No, we need to be treated equally in front of the Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Ndlozi.
I'm a minority, I mean, really.
Please, Honorable Ndlozi, you are out of order. The Honorable Member, Honorable Mulder,
yes,
put the question to the President. He has 2 minutes before he puts his question.
Yes, Honourable Speaker, it's time
Please proceed.
It's time that we workshop the Honourable Dr. Ndlozi, who is not well known with the procedures of Parliament. We should get a watch. 2 minutes is not 1 minute.
Please proceed, Dr. Mulder, your...
I'll get back. When he interfered, I still had about 30 seconds left. Sorry.
You actually have 41 seconds.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please go.
Thank you, ma'am. Honourable Speaker, one of the stalwarts of your organization 2 weeks ago interacted with the former Secretary General of your party, the Honourable Mantashe, now the Minister of Mineral Resources. And she said the following about minorities. She said, I never thought the day would come where I will be known as a minority. He said to me, he jumped up, don't worry about that. I said that it's what you say. But what are you as a leader doing to rank and file as you sit in your office and say, I'm not a minority? But outside and within the ANC, Sophie de Bruin, experiences to be a minority. That's the reality in South Africa. Now, Honourable Speaker, my question. In the last question, you indicated quite clearly that you're open for discussions when it was with regard to the Nkonyama Trust all the different issues.
Now you
Are
must really
yes,
round up.
I'm doing that. Are you prepared to enter into negotiations with minorities who feel alienated and who would like to make a contribution but feel currently not included? And I'm not asking the backbenchers, they know
Please address me. The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, it was interesting to see the battle between the two doctors, Dr. Ndozi and Dr. Mulder. Quite fascinating. Yes, the answer is yes, I am prepared to enter into that type of discussion. And I look forward to a dialogue between us to discuss precisely the issues. And I do, Dr. Mulder, Honorable Mulder, recognize that there are concerns. And these are concerns that we need to sit down and talk about. We did do quite a lot of work in that regard leading up to 1994. We used to be able to sit and chat about these matters, and now we've been caught up in the process of governance, and we now need to start again to engage in those types of discussions. So I'd like to extend a hand to you and say, yes, we will set time aside to have those types of discussions. Fireside chats for that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Honorable Mashabela.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is a growing tendency in society which would like us to believe that unity means forgetting the injustices of the past, which are manifested in the present by pervasive racism, race-based inequality, landlessness, and continued marginalization of black people from the economic, social, and cultural life in the country. In fulfilling your responsibilities to unite the nation, Mr. President, what must be the premise of that unity? Should it not be a thoroughgoing transformation of society that includes a rejection of colonialism and apartheid, and all that represented, including the inclusion of the stem in our national anthem? Thank you very much.
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Member, Honorable Mashabela, that is, yes, unity should not mean forgetting the injustices of the past. The preamble to our Constitution enjoins us to recognize the injustices of the past. It also enjoins us to embark on a journey of doing something about those injustices. Together as a nation, embarking on a transformative journey. Yes, indeed, rejecting what represented those injustices of the past in the form of colonialism and apartheid. Transformation must mean that we affirm those who were disadvantaged by the policies of the past, and at the same time, while we are on a journey to unite the people of South Africa, taking into account the various concerns that people may raise, and this we will be able to do in discussion and in active dialogue. The issue of the stem, the part of our national anthem, is what we arrived as a symbol of enabling us to build the nation that we are. And as I said, as we proceed on this basis, there are compromises, accommodations that need to be made. And I think that the anthem that we have, which is sung in 4 languages, I once said to one president that I know of no country in the whole world that has a national anthem that is sung at the same time in 4 languages. In Sesotho, in Nguni language, in English, and in Afrikaans. That is what represents who we are as a nation. And I think we should not reject that which unites us. Everything that unites us, we must embrace, and we must reject everything that divides us. And if those who hanker for the past want to hanker for the past and for the clear, know that that divides us, they must put it aside. We must embrace everything that unites us. Now,
point of order.
What's your point of order, Honorable
The
Malema?
point of order is that we are not talking about Afrikaans, the language. We're talking about the stem. Apartheid song that was sang when they were saluting that apartheid flag, which the court said it's a hate speech yesterday. So you must differentiate between the language and the song. We have no problem singing Afrikaans.
Thank you, Honorable Malema.
The stem can eat.
Honorable Malema, the point of order, unfortunately, will not be sustained. Honorable President, please continue.
Honorable Speaker, we need to understand that we have embarked on a journey which started 25 years ago. And this journey is a long journey. It's not going to be completed overnight. And it involves understanding one another, being able to be aware of the concerns of all of us, and embracing one another as one nation. We come from different histories. We come from different parts of the country. But the beauty that we have as South Africans is that we are diverse and we've got beauty in our diversity. And that is what distinguishes us from any other nation in the whole world. And this is what we must uphold. And it is clearly well articulated in our Constitution. So that is how we need to move forward. But at the same time, we must be transformative in what we do and reject those things that come from the past that seek to divide us and take us backwards. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The Honorable Shape.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, the preamble that you have alluded to goes on to say, through our freely elected representatives, we adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic. It then goes on to indicate 4 key issues that it seeks to achieve. My question, Mr. President, is that what role can the elected representatives of minorities, for lack of better word, what role can they play to allay this subjective fear or feeling of alienation as purported by Dr. Mulder? I thank you.
The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, I think that is a very important question. And I'd like Dr. Mulder, in the talks that we will have, we need to address precisely that question that has been raised. What role would the people that you say have serious concerns because they feel that they are minorities, what role can they play to make sure that what is set out in the preamble of our Constitution is realized? What role can they play to make sure that there's social justice in our country? What role can they play to ensure that every citizen is equally protected, even those who, under the system of apartheid, were disadvantaged and did not enjoy any rights? What role can we play to embrace one another so that we become this nation? Dr. Mulder, Honorable Mulder, I have found that a number of South Africans who are of Afrikaner origin, a number of them have extended their arms, opened their arms to want to be part of this new South Africa, this united nation that we are, rich in our diversity, but also recognizing that we can only thrive and succeed as one nation and never as one section of the nation moving in a different direction. And they embark on a number of projects, number of things that they do to try and heal the wounds of the past, to try and advance the interests of those who were disadvantaged in the past. So to me, that is the most important question, and I would like, when we sit to discuss this matter, we should also incorporate precisely the issue that has been raised by the Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your last supplementary comes from the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable President, arising from your response, the ACDP, like many others, are extremely concerned about deepening divisions in society, and you have alluded to that. And it's mainly along racial grounds, and there's obviously and undoubtedly an urgent need to promote unity, nation building, and social cohesion. And whilst you correctly say it starts with us here as leaders, civil society and faith-based organizations can play a key role. And President, believers in particular have a ministry of reconciliation and are commanded to love one another and to be peacemakers, whilst at the same time understanding the need for justice and restitution for the wrongs of the past. Given that, Honourable President, do you not think that churches and believers in the nation should be encouraged to reach hands and to find solutions? And if that is the case, and I know that you are engaging in that already, is there not far more we can do to heal the pains of the past and at the same time together reach the potential for this nation? I thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Yes, I couldn't agree more that faith-based organizations and believers have a big role to play in this regard, and they have always played a key role in the work of building our nation. Under apartheid, and yes, amen, under apartheid, it was faith-based organizations that led the charge to ensure that we bring the end to the nightmare of apartheid. And they were able to help bind the nation together, to heal the wounds of our nation, literally and figuratively. As people were being ravaged and being wounded and killed, they were in the forefront of bandaging the wounded and burying the dead. And they were also in the forefront of ensuring that there is peace. We once went through a horrendous period in our country where peace was nowhere to be found, and they are the ones who led the process for the peace accord in the late 80s and the early 90s. And it is to the religious leaders and faith-based organizations and believers that we should once again look to ensure that we continue this nation-building process. But they underpin it with what they call a moral regeneration. That yes, the nation should be a nation that adheres to certain values, that adheres to certain morals, and with the work that they do, they are committed to ensuring that South Africa becomes a nation that is united. And I would agree that this is where the faith-based organizations play a key role and religious leaders play an even important role. And I would say, because we at government level have been engaging with various churches, we held a summit where we brought together religious faith-based organizations. We are going to have follow-up discussions, and we see a very important role that is played by faith-based organizations in binding this nation together and ensuring that we adhere to a high ethical and moral code. So, Honorable Speaker, I could not agree more, and this is the work that we are committed to continuing with, and I'm delighted to hear that the ACDP will be joining us in this most wonderful work to a point where we are able to make a great deal of progress in this regard. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes the questions to the President. And I thank you, sir. Thank you. Honorable members. Honorable members, I got into the firing line today. The Honorable Mandela and Honorable Maimane were quick to point out that they were in the list for supplementaries. Indeed, they were. But also the 2 women members were also on the list. I think it would have been wrong for a discussion on land and on health when women had also pressed not to have been included and to have had an all-male supplementary session. So if I've done anything wrong, because your rules as the National Assembly are not very clear as to how to deal with this, I will apologize. Also, it is important to say that during the question time, we must accord every party that reaches out the opportunity to put a question or to put a comment on behalf of their constituencies. So if I did anything wrong there, then I apologize. Thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Order, members. Sir, you are on the floor.
Madam Speaker, in terms of Rule 26 of the National Assembly rules, Madam Speaker, our rules are very clear. The prerogative to choose who speaks rests with the Speaker. It's very clear you don't need to follow that order. And I respect your right to do so, and that's why we don't take points of order when that happens. However, I would like to take issue with the method which you've used today. Because if we go down the road of choosing people based on gender, then we're going to start going down the road of people based on language, on ethnicity, and all sorts of things. You can't have a debate around land without someone who's Afrikaans speaker asking a question. And I would urge that in future, that when you're using your discretion, that we are all equal members in this House. It doesn't matter what our sex is, doesn't matter what our race is, doesn't matter what our age is, it doesn't matter what language we speak. When we sit in this chamber, we are all equal members of Parliament.
Thank you very much, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Speaker.
Yes, sir.
I want to assure you that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you having prioritized females in discussing the land question. It can be an all-male discussion. So that discretion was revolutionary and we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I do take what you say, Honorable Steenhuisen, and I precisely looked at the different parties to ensure that that spread is done. I take your point. Honorable members, that concludes the business of the day, and this House is adjourned.